everything is always negotiable, right? There's always more to go get. There's always a better deal to be found, especially when it comes to new construction homes here in DFW, right? That's the perception. Now, is it the reality? I want to give you some context. I want to help you understand where builders might have some flexibility and where they might not be flexible. Because if you understand where they can bend and where they absolutely won't, you will stop wasting your energy and your time, and you will go continue to put together a really good deal when it comes to buying a new construction home. And let me just give you the point in all of this, and then I'm going to back you into how we're going to get there. The truth of this is flexibility is situational. More than anything else, it's situational. And if you understand, it's not about how hard you negotiate, or it's not about how nicely you ask. It's all about understanding the right situations. When you can back that in to how you're talking to a builder when it comes to new homes, this is where we find so many people will win. So I want to walk you through this and give you kind of some pro tips on what to look for, what to ask for, both on, inventory homes and potentially on to be built or, ground up construction. So if we haven't met before, my name is Zach. My team and I always sell new construction real estate here in DFW. So if you're coming to DFW, like so many of our friends are, or if you're already here and you need help, we'd love to help you. Love to represent you in that transaction and be a resource for you. So first and foremost, everything is negotiable, and it never hurts to ask, right? Because they always have room. Well, yes and no, within reason, right? So what you have to understand in the world of these production builders is they are in this to make money. First and foremost, they're in it to make money. And some people be like, well, how much money and this and that? And it's like, I don't know. But we want them to be somewhat profitable. That's how they continue to build homes, right? So what we don't want is like feeling like we get the back end or the bad end of a deal, right? So can they negotiate? Yes. Can they help us on price a little bit? Yes, somewhat. But one of the hard things that they're facing right now that I hear, not just from the salespeople, but from like the bosses of sales associates, is land cost and development costs are super expensive. So what's happening is they're getting squeezed on the top end, and then they're trying to figure out, well, okay, how do we make this work with where we need it to be based on our margins, based on our numbers, based on the cost of our trades, based on the cost of materials. So how do we make this work to where we still have money in the deal to do, temporary buy downs or permanent buy downs or closing costs or price reductions? Because we know people are always going to ask, because we all assume that they have room. And I will tell you, sometimes, yes, there have been times where we've gotten to a point where it's like, hey, there's literally nothing else to do, and you can either take it or leave it. And you just have to know kind of what that looks like and how to leverage that. Because what I don't want you doing is asking for things at the wrong time, asking for too much of stuff, and burning goodwill, right? So this flexibility that they have it's not an emotional decision. It's not that they like you or that they don't like you in some cases. Sometimes it could be, right? Like if you make a bad impression with a salesperson and you're just a jerk, yeah, of course they're not going to want to work with you. But if you're kind and you're straightforward, yeah, they can do that. But again, it still comes down to their math equation. So how do we find where they're most flexible? So really the key point is, I feel like, and I've experienced, based on what we've seen in our transactions, the higher the price, the more flexibility there is in price number, right? So like on a $350,000 house, there might be, $5,000-ish of flexibility. On a $650,000 house, there might be $15,000 or $25,000 in flexibility. It really just depends, right? And so where we're asking them to be flexible, we also want to do things that are the most beneficial for us in the transaction. So you have to look at it from all angles, right? Would you rather have money toward your closing costs so that you lower your cash in the deal? Would you rather have a lower interest rate so your payment is lower over time? Would you rather have a straight price reduction, right? And I think a lot of people, where we experience it, is the lived experience is most people would rather have a lower monthly payment and a lower cash in the deal than a lower overall purchase price. Sometimes as we move upward in the scale of pricing, we find that, hey, we want to get more off the price because, we're paying cash or we're putting more down or whatever that scenario is. So you have to kind of navigate that on your side and then work that with the builder on their side, right? Lots of times, here's kind of the key places where we see some flexibility early in neighborhoods. So like if they're just getting started and they're trying to build momentum and they're saying, hey, we've got the first couple transactions we're going to do in this neighborhood. Here's what we can do. I actually had this text the other day. We were talking to a sales agent and he's like, hey, here's what I can do for my first 5 houses. I've sold 2 of them. I can do 3 more with this deal. And I mean, it was like significant money toward design, significant money toward closing costs, some extra incentives thrown in, some reduction in lot costs because they were trying to get momentum to start that project, right? They didn't have model home on the ground yet. They were selling out of another community. And the moment they get into that model and they sell those first 5, well, then those pieces of the deal are going to change and they're going to shift. So this is where you can you can navigate it if you're timing it right, because demand isn't proven yet. They're still trying to test pricing in that neighborhood. So there's an opportunity to potentially make some deals a little bit on the side to where something might work. Because the other thing you have to understand is no builder is ever going to tell you what somebody else in your neighborhood got, right? You're never going to know that, right? So if you're looking at it and you're like, hey, well, we got this house from, 470 to 450. They gave me 10,000 in closing costs and they paid for a buy down. But then I saw somebody else bought the house and they got it for like 440. Well, what you don't know is maybe they paid cash for it, and maybe they didn't ask for all the incentive, and they're not going to tell you, so don't ask, because what you're going to do is you're going to drive yourself crazy, always trying to chase a better deal, when at some point you just have to be content with the deal that you put in place. So early in a neighborhood where there's not a lot of demand yet, you might be able to find some incentive dollars, some ways to make some things work. Again, you got to be realistic, right? Like if you're wanting to go in and get the best lot with the best floor plan, like there's going to be some give and take. So will they have that conversation with you? Yes. Will they, always say yes? Probably not. And will there always, it's not like this, when I was a kid, one of my favorite books that we always read was If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, right? And then there was all the subsequent, like if you give a pig a pancake, and then and it was always just like, if you do this, they're going to do this. And if you do this, they're going to do this. And if you do this, they're going to do this. And it just keeps going. And at some point, somebody has to say, stop, enough is enough. We have the deal that we have the home that we want, we need to move forward, right? And I think a lot of us in our minds have gotten this idea of like, if you give a mouse a cookie, well, then he's got to have a glass of milk, and then he's got to have a place to take a nap, and then you got to have, and it just never stops. And I need you to know that it has to stop at some point, because truthfully, the sales rep and even beyond them, their management team, they're going to say no. They're just gonna be like, whatever, we'll move on. So flexibility at the beginning of neighborhoods, be specific in what you're asking for, try and push things to be inside of the transaction to where, again, it protects their comps for the neighborhood, it protects their people that they're about to put under contract, and it protects you in the future. We don't want them giving everybody that walks in the door the ultra special, super secret mega deal, because then it screws you up, right? So do the things inside the transaction that can help you find a compromise that can come to a win. So that's when they have some flexibility at the beginning, at the end of a quarter, or at the end of a season, right? So we're coming into their fiscal year ends, they run on a typical calendar year. So like, hey, in March, when they're coming to an end of a quarter, they were slow. Maybe there's some potential to make a deal work. Maybe the traffic has slowed down in that neighborhood. So there's a slow, what they would call absorption rate. So like traffic is down, incentives are changing. They're trying to become solution oriented, because here's one of the interesting concepts with a lot of builders. Yes, they care about their margin, and yes, they care about making money. But what they also care about is opening up more capital so that they can go do the next project, right? So they might only make X dollars here, but by paying off that portion of their loan with the bank, they now opened up 6 figures of working capital that they can go start the next neighborhood or start the next 5 homes or whatever they need. So that's where they kind of start to become solution oriented. And then when they can get certainty, that's when it really starts to matter. Like, hey, they're certain, like, hey, you don't have a home to sell. Well, that's a certainty piece, right? Your job is good to go. Your finances are good to go. You can remove all of those uncertainties and make it a sure thing for them. That's where they start to get a little bit more likable, flexible, if you can remove some of those contingencies on their end. If you're looking at this and you're like, Zach, we still have our house to sell, they might work with you. They're definitely going to be hesitant to work with you on an inventory home, but they're going to ask you, hey, how can we remove your contingencies? How can we help you get your home sold? How can, like, at some point they're going to start saying these monies are non-refundable. You're not going to get it back. Yes, we can do this if you have a home to sell, but we need you to be invested and have skin in this game. Like, we can't take all the risk without you wanting to, carry some of that with us. And so that's where they're going to try and push a little bit on you to come to a compromise. And if you're willing to compromise, they will be flexible. So one of the things where I want you to understand where they're not going to be flexible with a lot of things. Number one, when you're building a house, and you're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost you, most of the time they're not going to be flexible on the base price, right? Because if they've changed the base price a couple of different times, what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, this is where we are base price. Occasionally they will come off of that, but realistically what you need to be asking for is more toward your design and your structure and your closing costs. Like I said, very rarely will they come off of that base price. I've seen it happen maybe once or twice, but that's just kind of not the way that they operate. Speaking of which, flexibility wise, when you're in design, and I've had this happen a couple times recently, the flexibility is not in the design center pricing on what something should cost, right? So the cost is the cost. Like the design center is not going to say, oh, well, you said you could do this cheaper, let's negotiate on it. No, the cost is the cost, and you either have to be okay with it or you have to leave it out. So we want to make sure we maximize our monies for design. And of course, the higher the budget of the home, probably the more you're going to have in design. Baseline, you're probably going to have somewhere between 15, 20, 25,000, give or take with most builders. That's going to be your base, I would say. And then assume you could probably ask for maybe 3 to 5,000 extra. Are they always going to say yes to that? No. Are they open to that? It really depends. But again, when we go to the design center and you're trying to put down this level of floor, or you're picking this kitchen countertop, or these, like, the price is unfortunately the price, and that's not the place to negotiate. So you're not going to find flexibility in that space. Like similarly, you're not going to find flexibility in the cost of structural upgrades. Like, oh, we want to add the third car garage. Well, it's $17,000. Well, can we do it for 15? No. Like that's not the place where they're going to be flexible, because it just gets really, really complicated, and they price that way for a reason. So just know, like, those are not your flexibility pieces. Your flexibility is in your kind of incentive dollars and your monies that you have to play with. Another place that you may or may not be able to flex with a little bit is your earnest money deposits. Some builders are super strict on, hey, we have to have this much money from you before we can start doing this process. Others are a little bit more flexible, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, we can cut it down. We normally would take 10,000, but we can do it for 7, or we can do it for 5. Or sometimes they'll be flexible with the payment schedule on that. Like, hey, can we do this in split payments? Like, we owe you, $10,000. Can we do it in 2 payments of 5,000 over the course of the next 2 months, or whatever? Ask about those things. There is a little bit of room, depending on the builder, to know how to navigate that. A lot of that depends on the sales rep, to be honest. It's kind of their responsibility to follow up with you, make sure you're making those earnest money deposits, make sure they're collecting those funds. And if they have a good rapport with their builder, they can kind of flex that a little bit. Some of them have cracked down a little bit more on it, and they're like, no, we have to have this earnest money deposit. You're going to have to be in the deal for something. There's no way to be like, oh yeah, I want to write the contract with, $0 out of pocket. Now, some builders have significantly reduced their deposits and significantly reduced the money that's in it, but you're going to have to do something to be involved in that. So that's kind of one of those non-flexible things. Hey, we're looking at the cost of things in design. We're looking at earnest money deposits. If you're looking at the best product in the neighborhood that has, it's an inventory home, and they, it's got everything that they want in it, and they've sold a bunch of them, they're probably not going to have some flexibility on that, right? Just know, if they've had early success in that neighborhood, or if they're on a hot streak for some reason, oh my goodness, like a hot streak happens and they sell 5 homes over the course of a week. Well, all of a sudden they don't need to negotiate anymore. And they're like, nope, sorry, we'll wait and see when somebody else shows up. So you just have to push the right way, push respectfully. You have to be reasonable in your ask. And then there comes a point, and I always tell our clients this, like, guys, we can ask for whatever you want. My job is to help structure the ask within reason, based on what we know, historically with these builders, based on what we've done previously with this salesperson, or previously in this neighborhood. That's kind of my way I want to structure that with you. And then you have to know when you're going to walk away, right? Because at a certain point, they're going to say, hey, we can do this or we cannot, and take it or leave it. And you're like, well, I don't understand why you wouldn't take it, right? And they're like, well, we're just going to wait and see what happens. We don't have to move on this, right? So look for things like number of available homes. Look for how fast things are going under contract. Like, if you see stuff sitting can be a number of flexibility, but can also, like, it's kind of a side note of, like, Because a lot of times builders will build a home, and as soon as they start building, they'll put it online, and you're like, oh, well, this home's been sitting for 6 months. And it's like, well, no, it took them 6 months to build it. It's only been sitting for 30 days. Now, sometimes it has been sitting for a little bit. So just keep an eye on it. Watch how they do things. Listen to the language the salesperson uses, right? Like if they're saying, hey, we're almost sold out, and take it with a grain of salt. So on the one hand, yes, they're trying to sell you that home, like that is their job. That is their livelihood. That's how they're getting paid. On the other hand, they're getting, what's being told to them pressure wise from their management team, like, hey, do this, do this, do this. And then it's like, well, here's what they're being told and here's what they're experiencing. How do they mesh those things together? And urgency to me is it's a clue, right? Not a command. It is a clue, and you have to kind of piece all of these things together. So if you're going to use flexibility, I want you to do the couple things. I want you to have one clean ask, like, hey, we want it's really simple. Hey, we did this the other day with a builder. Hey, we want to get from this price to this price. I want this much extra in closing costs. I want to close on this date, and I want this thrown in. Can we do that? Yes or no? And it's clear, it's cut, it's concise. We've removed all the emotion from it. We've gone back and forth. And then at that point, they're either going to say yes or they're going to counter. And if they counter, you have to decide, is it worth it, right? They're not reasonable. They are not willing to be unreasonable. They will be, like, they're willing to move homes. They're willing to make things work, but you have to be reasonable in your ask. Like, it can't be, hey, we went from 400 to 250 and we got a pony and we got pizza parties for a year. Again, like, you can ask for whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you don't get them by pushing harder. Like, you don't get them by just continually strong arming and continually pushing back and continually being aloof and being frustrating. You get them by working smarter. And every deal at some point is going to hit its ceiling. And past that point, you risk losing. Let's just be honest. You risk losing. They'll tell you when they've reached the line. It's like, hey, we can do this or we can't. And if you can't, we'll wait it out. And your leverage ends when they're okay walking away from you. And that comes from, like, if you're just being exhausting, or you're being difficult to work with, or you have a difficult finance situation, or you have this contingency, every step in that process makes it harder for them to say yes to you. So your job and my job to help you is to make it easy for them to say yes to us, to get us to the place that you want, to get you the house that you want. Because like I've said in so many other videos, we can make the deal work all day long, but if you don't love the house, you're going to have regrets, right? So I got to get you to a place where you love your house, you love the neighborhood, and then let's go make it work. So again, wrapping all of this back up, think in terms of $3,000 to $5,000, maybe $10,000 in flexibility in some spaces. It really depends. If they're pre-buying the interest rates, well, they're spending a lot of money to get those rates to where they need to be. In some cases, $40,000 to $50,000 per house. And they'll tell you that. So factor that into the cost. Ask for things that may be, not necessarily called in the deal, but that, washer, dryer, fridge, blinds, anything like that. Epoxy in the garage potentially could be one of those things that you ask for. Hey, maybe it's a little bit off of the price and a little bit more toward closing costs, because closing costs can get wrapped up in a transaction and nobody actually sees where those get included, but they help you in the long run. So flexibility, yes. Unlimited flexibility to do whatever you want, no. But as a buyer right now, I do see you have some great opportunities in the market. We saw, I keep saying this because I'm articulating a goal for me for this year. Last year, we saw almost 7 figures of incentive dollars in all of our transactions, which means closing costs, buy downs, price reductions. We got to almost 7 figures. I got so close. And so the goal this year is we're crossing that 7-figure mark in incentive dollars for you guys in monies saved. So that's the goal for us this year. I want you, again, I keep telling you this, and I'm telling you this both ways. Like, be flexible, but also be realistic. There's so many opportunities out there right now for you to get the home that you love and make it make sense any way you can. So if I can help you with that, I would love to. I'd be honored. Contact information, as always, is right here on the bottom of the screen. Reach out if you have questions, or you're trying to navigate a deal and things to ask for. I would love to just have that conversation with you and give you some more insight and be like, hey, here's how we can go win the house that you absolutely love, because I believe it's doable and we can make it happen. So appreciate you guys. We'll see you in our next video.